Earlier in the evening, I had stopped by to visit my old friend Jack. We hadn't seen each other in ages, and our reunion had been filled with laughter and reminiscing about the good old days. Time had slipped away, and I left Jack's place much later than intended. The rain came down relentlessly, drumming on the roof of my car as I navigated the winding roads. There were barely any other vehicles on the road at this late hour, and the solitude only added to the eerie atmosphere. I tried to keep my spirits up by tuning in to the local radio station, but the static-laden voices did little to ease my growing unease. As I approached the outskirts of my village, a place I passed through every day, I couldn't help but glance at the old cemetery that lay adjacent to the road. The gnarled trees and moss-covered gravestones had always given me the creeps. But tonight, it was even worse. That's when it happened. In the dim glow of my rearview mirror, I saw something that sent a shiver down my spine. There was a man in the back seat of my car, his long, unkempt hair obscuring his face. He sat there motionless, his eerie gaze locked onto mine through the mirror. My heart pounded in my chest and panic washed over me. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. It couldn't be real. I blinked hard, thinking it was a trick of the rain-slicked glass or perhaps exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. But when I blinked again, the man was still there, his pale, ghastly visage hauntingly clear in the reflection. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I realized that this was no mere illusion. I wasn't alone in my car, and the passenger in my back seat was undeniably real, despite how impossible it seemed. My mind raced as I struggled to process what was happening. I knew I needed to act quickly. Without taking my eyes off the mirror, I slammed my foot onto the brake pedal, bringing the car to a screeching halt. The sudden stop jolted me forward, and my heart pounded even harder in my chest. With trembling hands, I turned to look into the back seat, fully expecting to confront the intruder. But when I twisted my body to face the rear, there was no one there. The seat was empty, and the eerie man with the long hair had vanished into thin air. Doubt and fear clawed at my sanity. As I scanned the back seat, desperately trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed, my disbelief was giving way to a chilling realization. I had always been a skeptic, scoffing at tales of the paranormal and dismissing ghostly encounters as mere superstitions. But now, as I sat alone in my car on that rainy, desolate road, I couldn't deny the unsettling truth. I had just witnessed something beyond the realm of the living, something that defied all logical explanation. My hands trembling, I started the car again and drove home in a daze, haunted by the ghostly encounter that would forever change my beliefs and fill my nights with an unshakable dread. In that moment, I became a believer in the inexplicable, for I had come face to face with the spectral unknown, and there was no denying its chilling reality. It was a cool autumn evening, and a chilling breeze crept through the cracked window panes of my apartment. The amber hue of the streetlights filtered through the curtains, casting eerie shadows across the room. I'll give you some advice. Don't look in mirrors for long periods of time, especially at night. I've read on websites that this is how you can see yourself in your old age, if you're lucky. If you're not, you'll see something truly horrible. I had always been one to dabble in the mysterious and unexplained. A thirst for the supernatural had led me to explore the darkest corners of the internet, where tales of mirrors and their uncanny secrets whispered to those who would listen. And so, that fateful night, I decided to put it to the test. Extreme, you might say. But what can I say? Curiosity often takes us to places we shouldn't venture. Exactly at midnight, when I had a friend at home, I sat in front of the mirror. The ancient-looking glass stood at the corner of my room, gathering dust and reflecting a twisted version of reality. Only 10-12 centimeters separated me from its smooth surface. And what did I do? Right? I stared into my eyes and sat like that for about 15 minutes. From the outside, it looked like nothing was happening, but in fact, I felt very bad. It felt like my mind was leaving me as I gazed deeply into my own reflection. My eyes locked with my own in the mirror, They were so cold, it sent shivers down my spine. I moved even closer. That's when it all started. I was sitting in the dark, the room only slightly illuminated by the faint glow of the TV. Suddenly, my pupils began to dilate. I don't remember if I smiled and it was reflected in the mirror, or if my reflection did it without my consent. I fell into a terrible trance, one that I can hardly remember. Suddenly, my pupils dilated even more, and the iris began to pale. My eyes are blue, but it was incomprehensible in the reflection. My face in the mirror began to wrinkle. Yes, I saw myself in my old age. It's so scary. It's better not to know your future, not even to know what you look like. It's better that way. And then it got worse. My temples throbbed, and my pupils became so wide in the reflection that I couldn't see the iris at all. Suddenly, my face broke into the kind of creepy smile that haunted my nightmares for about a week. The eye twitched like a madman's. One pupil shrank, and the smile was terribly savage. It was as if the glass had become a portal, pulling me into some distorted version of reality. I'd already made contact with the glass with the tip of my nose. I'd never been so scared before. Suddenly, I put my palm on the mirror, and it was as if I had made contact with the palm of my reflection. My friend, who had been silently watching the entire bizarre spectacle, snapped me out of my trance. Everything disappeared: the smile, the dilated pupils. I was truly horrified when I saw that the mirror on top, in the corner, even fogged up. I don't do such experiments anymore, and I don't advise you to. It's better not to take any risks. I'll say one thing: it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life. The memory of that night and the sinister reflection that looked back at me still sends a chill down my spine whenever I catch my own gaze in a mirror, especially at night. The air was thick with unease in my office as I sat across from Martin, an unremarkable middle-aged man who had come to see me. While midlife crises were not uncommon among my patients, there was something about Martin's demeanor that set him apart from the rest. His name was Martin, and he had cast a shadow over my otherwise routine day. At first, his complaints seemed like the usual blend of anxiety and depression. His eyes darted nervously around the room as he spoke, but his answers to my questions were vague and evasive. It was evident that he was concealing something darker. But then, with a hesitant sigh, he finally confessed the true source of his anguish: the mirrors in his house. I leaned forward, my curiosity piqued. "Can you explain further?" Martin nodded, his eyes briefly glancing at the small mirror on my desk. "When I look in the mirror at home, my reflection, it doesn't reflect me. It's as if it lives on its own. It only imitates my movements so as not to give itself away, the anger in its eyes. It's not mine." My clinical instincts urged me to dismiss Martin's claims as delusions, but something in his eyes, the raw fear, made me pause. I prescribed antidepressants and scheduled follow-up appointments just to be safe. Martin dutifully visited a few more times, the medication seemingly providing some relief. Then, abruptly, he disappeared, his appointments forgotten by my overburdened schedule. A month and a half passed, and it was as if Martin had never crossed my path. But then, a knock came at my office door. A police officer, stern and composed, stood in my doorway, inquiring about Martin. The officer's questions were meticulous, almost probing, and they sent a shiver down my spine. Had Martin committed a crime? My heart raced as the officer revealed the truth: Martin was dead, a victim of heart attack, the officer assured me. But there was something strange about the case. The deceased had lived with his parents before buying his own flat. Initially elated by his newfound independence, he slowly changed. Anxiety gnawed at him, and he began to isolate himself. It was Martin's mother who had encouraged him to seek help from me. As the officer recounted the details, the story became increasingly unsettling. Martin's mother had found him lifeless in his flat, and her discovery had triggered the investigation. But two details stood out: there were no mirrors in Martin's flat, not even the door with its built-in mirror. And Martin's appearance had subtly altered. His ears, in particular, were different from his earlier photographs, as though they had been replaced before his death. My mind raced as I absorbed the strange revelations. I felt a chill in my spine as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The mirrors, the unrecognizable reflection, the bizarre changes in Martin's appearance. All of it hinted at something far more sinister than a simple midlife crisis. As the police officer left my office, his parting words hung in the air, haunting my thoughts. "Doctor, we have no explanation for any of this, but we're investigating. If you remember anything else, please don't hesitate to contact us." Alone in my office, I couldn't shake the feeling that Martin's story was far from over, that it was just the beginning of a chilling mystery I couldn't ignore. I stared at the mirror on my desk, half expecting to see a malevolent reflection staring back at me. But all I saw was my own troubled reflection, lost in a world of unanswered questions and growing fear.